I am Shay Brawn. I'm the artistic director of Aunt Lute Books. So I joined Aunt Lute in 1995. I was still working on my PhD then and was trying to decide whether or not I wanted to stay in academia. And Aunt Lute was very attractive to me as a different kind of path because it had published books that had been very important to me in my academic career. And I just thought Aunt Lute was doing really important work. And for me, what Aunt Lute illuminated that hadn't been that clear to me in graduate school, where like the culture and canon wars were really blazing. We had been having all these arguments about who should people be reading, what should be on the reading list, and no conversation at all, or very little, about who was getting published, about how the books got to be available to be on those reading lists at all. And here was Aunt Lute playing this very important role of making sure that some works were existing, that were speaking to experiences and questions that we were really interested in engaging with. Aunt Lute has always been about uplifting and supporting voices and experiences that aren't always valued in mainstream literary production, right, by big presses, etc. I think that that's a kind of through line through what we do. I think we've always been interested in trying to play a role of helping to amplify voices without making people to conform to a particular vision of what those voices should sound like or what kinds of messaging or anything. Like we've tried not to be, take on that kind of gatekeeping role. I think that's been crucial all along. I think that one of the things that's changed is that, the whole publishing landscape has changed, right? We have the digitization, the internet. I mean, everything has kind of opened up the world in ways to different kinds of voices and different kinds of participants and cultural creators in ways that just weren't possible, 40 years ago. There is something that Aunt Lute has always done, but I think becomes sort of critically crucial in when there is just so much, right? So much available, is that we try to cultivate communities around literature or conversations around books, to convene audiences and authors, to facilitate kind of connection between people in ways that kind of just go beyond a sort of distanced author-reader relationship. I think literature is crucial to the social justice fight in many ways. For me, what literature does that almost nothing else can do in the same way is that it shows us how things are experienced in embodied ways that we can identify with. It helps us lead lives that we wouldn't otherwise lead, to experience things from points of view that we wouldn't otherwise experience, and sometimes to see our own experience represented in ways that just often aren't in other domains. So there's both things, both getting to kind of break out of the sort of bubbles that we all live in, but also to see oneself reflected in the culture. I think both of those things are really important to a sense of belonging in the world, but also a sense of openness to other people belonging in the world with you, and et cetera. So I think that there's something fundamental about recognition that happens through narrative. So I would say that my favorite thing about radical reading and radical writing is when people take sort of familiar stories and tropes and then just surprise the hell out of me and make me see something new, something that hadn't been visible to me before, that allow me to then sort of take that lens and look at other things, and that's literature, that's good television, that's good culture, good kind of radical culture that just defamiliarizes the world in ways I like it best when it's fun and kind of irreverent. But just the way that kind of cracking open old sort of structures, narrative structures, visual structures, anything, and then just like kind of opening up new possibilities, that's just exhilarating. And it makes me feel hopeful when sometimes it's really hard to feel hopeful, right? Because you just feel like it's always going to be this stuck kind of brutal world. But no, there's all kinds of possibilities for connection and for people to love each other in ways that aren't always clear.